Aren't you Yang Yi? This time, Yang Yi was flabbergasted. Elder Shui knows who I am? A long time passed before Yang Yi spoke solemnly. All of you know? She gazed at him for a long time and asked, What do you think? Yang Yi asked, When? Elder Shui replied indifferently, Not long ago. Yang Yi asked, How many are aware? Elder Shui replied, Just the Grand Elder and I know in the sect. As if she knew what Yang Yi was thinking, Elder Shui smiled. Don't think too much about it. You're very, very well known in Eternal Border, but not in Eternal Kingdom. Besides the higher-ups of the top powers, practically everyone else is unaware of who Yang Yi is. As for the Grand Elder and I, we didn't hear about you because of you. It's because of the sprite progenitor. Yang Yi smiled. So I'm still safe? Elder Shui replied solemnly. Your background is too suspicious, because someone like you didn't exist in Eternal Kingdom before this. So, we used the sect's resources to investigate you, but we failed to find out anything. Thus, the sect master sent people to Eternal Border. Yang Yi glanced at Elder Shui. I'm Yang Yi, yet you still want me to be the sect master? She shook her head slightly. You must realize that while some in Eternal Kingdom wish to kill you and obtain the sprite progenitor, it's only a small number of people and not the entire Eternal Kingdom. Right? Yang Yi fell silent. Elder Shui added, Up until now, the ancient sword sect hasn't sent anyone to kill you, and we've always maintained a neutral attitude toward you. After all, you have the sprite progenitor, and it's linked to Eternal Kingdom's future. She walked over to him and continued, You must understand that Eternal Kingdom doesn't belong to a single person or power. There are many voices here, and until you join the desolate race to attack Eternal Kingdom, the ancient sword sect and some other powers won't treat you as an enemy. After all, a sprite progenitor is willing to stay with you, so as far as we're concerned, you're definitely not someone evil. Yang Yi smiled. Even then, aren't you afraid that the other powers will target the sect because of me? She looked him in the eyes. That depends on you. You're right, perhaps they will target us. But some other powers may display goodwill. No one knows what will actually happen. Yang Yi looked out of the bamboo house, and he felt quite lost. Meanwhile, Elder Shui had left the house. Obviously, she was giving him time to think. In the room, Sword Scroll appeared by Yang Ye's side. She glanced at where the sect master had taken his last breath, but there was no change in her expression. A short while later, she gazed at Yang Yi. She's right. Only some powers in Eternal Kingdom are acting against you and not the entire Eternal Kingdom. For example, the ancient sword sect didn't target you, and they want to take your side instead. Yang Yi shook his head. I don't want to be the sect master. Moreover, I'm not made for it. Sword Scroll replied solemnly. If you don't be the sect master and let someone else do it, then that person may lead the ancient sword sect to become your enemy. I know you're not afraid, but if you take control of the ancient sword sect, it represents that you'll have help. I'm sure you're seeing the resources and reserves possessed by the sect. If the ancient sword sect is on your side, then even if your identity is exposed, those powers will have to really consider the consequences of targeting you. Yang Yi gazed at her and smiled. Do you want me to become the sect master that badly? She nodded. Yang Yi was quite curious. Why? She fell silent. Yang Yi spoke softly. You can't let go of this place, right? She nodded slightly. The seniors of the ancient sword sect used the resources of the entire sect to create me. This place is my home, and I've never forgotten the kindness they showed me when creating me. They made me, but they didn't use me. My status in the sect was very great and only inferior to the sect master, and even the sect master had to be polite to me. I don't want the ancient sword sect to go into decline, especially at a time like this when he is dead. The sect will definitely fall into a dangerous situation. Yang Yi laughed bitterly. You think I can save this sect? Or perhaps you think I can help it rise up once again? Sword Scroll replied solemnly. At the very least, the ancient sword sect won't be cowardly. Even if it suffers a decline, it won't be a cowardly declined sect. Yang Yi gazed at her and remained silent. Meanwhile, Sword Scroll added, In any case, Snowy and the others aren't back yet, and the desolate race hasn't attacked. So just be the sect master for now, alright? Yang Yi was quite tempted by this. While he didn't like to be shackled, he felt that being the sect master wasn't disadvantageous either. While he would have to face some issues, the benefits were obvious as well. Meanwhile, Sword Scroll continued. If you take control of the ancient sword sect, you can bring those girls from the Nether Pavilion here. Not just them, you can bring some of your friends here too, like Elder Mu and the others. The ancient sword sect is an extraordinary power, and it can be a safe home for them. Yang Yi fell silent for a long time as he gazed at the ring before him. In the end, he wore it. Just like that, Yang Yi became the youngest master of the ancient sword sect. The sect master. Meanwhile, Elder Shui and the Grand Elder walked into the bamboo house. They seemed slightly relieved when they saw Yang Yi wearing the ring. Of course, there were also some complicated emotions in them. Actually, as far as they were concerned, Yang Yi wasn't suitable, or it should be said that he wasn't suitable right now. However, the previous sect master had given a firm order. So, while they were quite hesitant about his choice, they still decided to obey his orders. It was because his contribution to the sect had been too great. Now, when they saw Yang Yi wear the ring, they couldn't help but feel slightly lost toward the sect's future. The young man before him was no different than a child to them. Yang Yi glanced at them and said, "Do we have to keep the previous sect master's death a secret?" Elder Shui shook her head. "It's impossible to keep a secret." Yang Yi nodded slightly and said, "How's the investigation on the soul sect going?" Elder Shui replied, "Put that aside for now. Now, there are two important matters to deal with. Firstly, it's to announce the previous sect master's death. And the second is you." Yang Yi was quite puzzled. "Me?" Elder Shui nodded. "You're the sect master now, and that requires a process, a ceremony. At that time, the other powers and some powers in the West region will come to congratulate you." Yang Yi hesitated for a moment and asked, "Can we just skip those useless procedures?" Elder Shui shook her head. "It must be done. Only then will you truly be acknowledged as the sect master. Moreover, if you don't hold the ceremony, my ancient sword sect and the countless other subordinate sects of ours will not acknowledge you." Yang Yi thought for a moment and asked, "What if no one comes? Wouldn't that be really embarrassing?" Elder Shui glanced at him and said, "It probably won't be that bad." Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Just like that, an absolutely shocking piece of news swept through Eternal Kingdom 3 days later. The previous sect master of the ancient sword sect had passed away. The previous sect master of the ancient sword sect had participated in the war all those years ago, and he and the super divine treasure of the ancient sword sect were existences that instilled terrors into those who had ill intent toward the sect. Yet now he was gone. What was the ancient sword sect's future? But it didn't take long for another piece of news to spread. A new sect master had appeared. Yiyang. It was undoubtedly an extremely unfamiliar name to the entire Eternal Kingdom. Of course, that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Yiyang was very young. He was the youngest sect master in the history of the ancient sword sect. As for the most shocking part about it, Sect Master Yiyang was actually just a 3-world realm expert. The 3-world realm. For a time, the ancient sword sect had practically become the laughingstock of the entire Eternal Kingdom. They were saying that Yiyang was an illegitimate child of the previous sect master. It could be said that the announcement of these two things from the ancient sword sect had caused quite a tremor through Eternal Kingdom. On this day, Yang Yi wore an elegant violet robe, and his hair hung down to his shoulder. It was Elder Shui who dressed him up like this, and it was so he looked a little more mature. Yang Yi was extremely annoyed by this. In the main hall of the ancient sword sect, Yang Yi sat at the seat of the host. From this seat, he could see to the bottom of the stairs outside the hall. Today, he was going to entertain the various powers who came to congratulate him. It felt very uncomfortable. It was extremely uncomfortable for Yang Yi. But besides that, he felt it was quite fun. After so many years of cultivating and traveling the world, he'd never experienced something like this. A short while later, the Grand Elder led a group of sword cultivators into the hall. There were around 200 of them, and they weren't weak. There were quite a few at the five-world realm among them. They bowed slightly to Yang Yi in unison. Sect Master. Yang Yi nodded and spoke in a mature manner. At ease. They glanced at him with a rather weird expression on their faces. What a young sect master. Of course, most of them were rather displeased. Becoming the sect master at the three-world realm? Then wouldn't experts at the four-world realm and five-world realm like them be capable of being the Eternal Lord? While many thought like that, they didn't dare to say anything. After all, Elder Shui and the Grand Elder were still here. Yang Yi glanced at the disciples of the ancient sword sect and smiled. I know what you're thinking. Since you don't like it, why don't you step forward and say it? As he spoke, he walked over to them. If you're unhappy, then be a man and say it out loud. They exchanged glances. The Grand Elder and Elder Shui glanced at Yang Yi but didn't say anything. Yang Yi smiled. What? Are the disciples of my ancient sword sect this cowardly? Suddenly, a man stepped forward and looked Yang Yi in the eyes. I refuse to accept this. Yang Yi nodded. That's an illness, but that's fine. I've always been a specialist at things like this. Obtain their acknowledgement. Yang Yi was very well aware that many would definitely not be convinced by such a young sect master. Even if they didn't say anything out in the open, they would definitely be dissatisfied in private. He had to make them acknowledge him. If they didn't, would anyone take him seriously? Since he'd agreed to take the position, he had to do it well. The disciple before Yang Yi was a five-world realm expert, an elite disciple. He dared to step forward and voice his dissatisfaction because he was an elite disciple. The elite disciple spoke indifferently upon hearing Yang Yi. I hope you can help me with it. Yang Yi nodded. Make your move. The elite disciple glanced at the surroundings. Should we go somewhere else? Yang Yi shook his head. It isn't necessary. Just do it. The elite disciple gazed at Yang Yi. You're at the three-world realm while I'm at the five-world realm. For fairness' sake, I'll let you attack 3 times first. Some laughter resounded when he spoke those words. Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, Then I won't hold back. As soon as he finished speaking, the surroundings fell silent, because 2 swords had suddenly appeared on both sides of the elite disciple's neck. 2 flying swords. Everyone here was shocked, including that elite disciple, because he hadn't been able to react. Or it should be said he didn't even know when those swords had appeared by his neck. The surroundings fell silent to the point it felt like it had frozen solid. Yang Yi issued a command in his heart, and the flying swords returned to the sword gourd. He gazed at the elite disciple and said, Why don't you attack first? The elite disciple gazed at Yang Yi for a long time and tapped his finger forward. A sword howl resounded, and then a ray of light flashed. However, it only took a moment for the elite disciple's face to freeze, because a flying sword had stopped before his forehead. As for his attack, it was just at the center between him and Yang Yi. This time, many sword cultivators here had solemn expressions on their faces. The elite disciple before Yang Yi bowed slightly. I accept defeat. He was at the 5-world realm while the sect master before him was just at the 3-world realm. However, he wasn't able to fight back at all. Now, he knew that this sect master he just provoked wasn't an illegitimate child of the previous sect master like the rumors had said. Even if he had the right to be the sect master. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings, and all of them bowed to him. Yang Yi nodded and returned to his seat. He gazed at Elder Shui, and the latter grinned with satisfaction. Both she and the Grand Elder were most afraid that Yang Yi couldn't make everyone acknowledge him. But it seemed like at least the disciples did. As for the experts of the older generation, it didn't matter because she and the Grand Elder were there to deal with them. Moreover, she was certain that in just 2 or 3 years from now, no one in the ancient sword sect would dare to not acknowledge him. The Yi clan's Yi Jibei has arrived. Meanwhile, a voice came from outside the hall, and then another voice followed. The Xing clan's Xing Biqing has arrived. Yang Yi was delighted and stood up. But Elder Shui glanced at him, and he smiled. They are my friends, so we can just be casual. As he spoke, he walked down. Meanwhile, Yi Jibei and Xing Biqing had appeared before him. They had exquisite boxes in their hands. Xianxia smiled. Just coming is enough. There's no need for gifts. Seriously, it makes me feel so embarrassed. As he spoke, he took both the boxes and placed them in the primordial pagoda. Both of them were flabbergasted by this. Yizhibe and Xing shook their heads slightly. They felt that his skin was still so thick even after becoming a sect master, and they wondered, can't he show some restraint? Xing smiled. Congratulations. Xianxia smiled. I was forced into this, so there's nothing happy about it. Anyway, weren't both of you in the war dimension? What are you doing here? Xing explained. We left temporarily when we heard you've become a sect master. We had to come and congratulate you, right? Xianxia smiled. If you become the patriarchs of your clans, I'll definitely congratulate you too, and I'll give you a great gift. Xing smiled. Don't worry about it. She glanced at the surroundings and asked, Are the Lung clan and Lu clan not here? Xianxia replied, Perhaps they are still on the way. They nodded slightly and didn't say anything. After that, Xianxia was congratulated by many clans. Practically all of them were from the West region and were subordinate to the ancient sword sect, so they naturally wouldn't miss the ceremony. But even until the end of it, the Lung clan and Lu clan did not attend. Actually, just Xing and Yizhibe representing their respective clans wasn't really suitable. After all, they weren't the leaders of their clans yet. Xianxia understood it all well. Besides the Yi clan, Xing had probably come out of consideration for their friendship. However, he accepted it no matter what. Yizhibe and Xing didn't stay for long, and they left after talking with Xianxia for some time. Xianxia didn't ask them to stay either. He knew they were very busy. It didn't take long for most to leave. Right when the event was about to end, a black-robed man appeared outside the hall. The Grand Elder and Elder Shui frowned upon noticing him. The black-robed man walked over to the entrance and looked up at Xianxia. My soul sect is here to congratulate you on becoming the ancient sword sect's master. This is your gift. He flicked 6 iron boxes into the hall, and there were heads in each of them. Elder Shui's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing those heads, and ghastly killing intent filled her eyes. 3 of the heads in the boxes belonged to the elders of the ancient sword sect, and Xianxia recognized one of them. It was the outer court elder, Elder Kong Ming. As for the other 3 heads, they belonged to the experts of the clans subordinate to the ancient sword sect. Xianxia glanced at the black-robed man and said, Looks like your soul sect really doesn't like me being the ancient sword sect's master, huh? The black-robed man smiled. Of course not. See? We even brought you a gift to congratulate you, right? Xianxia grinned. It's fine. If you want to play, then we can play. The black-robed man nodded. I hope you can. His figure gradually turned ethereal. They were no fools, so of course they sent a clone. Once the black-robed man left, Xianxia glanced at the surroundings and said, Elder Shui, Grand Elder, can you locate them? The Grand Elder hesitated for a moment and replied, I've notified the other powers, and they'll give us a reply soon. So, Xianxia waved his hand. They've already attacked, so what are we waiting for? We should be giving them a tooth for a tooth now. Give the order to search for their whereabouts. Use all the resources available to our sect. The Grand Elder thought for a moment and nodded. Understood. Xianxia left the hall and went to his abode. There were experts protecting it in secret. Elder Shui followed behind Xianxia. In the abode, she spoke solemnly. Besides the Yi clan, the attitude of the other clans was very vague. They didn't object to it, but they didn't congratulate you either. Xianxia replied, What about the soul sect? She replied solemnly, We received no reply. Xianxia fell silent for a short while and said, Elder Shui, what realm of cultivation was the previous sect master at? Elder Shui replied, In Eternal Kingdom, there are no more than 10 who are at that level of cultivation. Xianxia spoke softly. Will they treat the ancient sword sect as they did the D clan all those years ago? Elder Shui frowned. While our previous sect master has passed away, our resources and reserves still exist. It can be said that even if the other clans join forces, They won't be able to destroy us with ease. The Soul Sect has appeared. Yang Yi spoke abruptly. It's definitely not a coincidence that they made an appearance now. Elder Shui sighed softly. So much to worry about. Yang Yi suddenly chuckled. There's no need to worry. No matter what their objective is, all we need is to be strong. As for the Soul Sect, we can sharpen our swords with them. Elder Shui spoke solemnly. I'm afraid that the Soul Sect has formed an agreement of some sort with other powers. It's very likely. Otherwise, they would absolutely not dare to openly show themselves in the West region, and do so just when the Sect Master's time was up. She gazed at Yang Yi and continued, You absolutely can't leave the Sect now, because they have their sights set on you now. So long as you leave the Sect, we cannot guarantee your safety. Yang Yi smiled. So I should cower like a coward? Elder Shui frowned slightly, and Yang Yi chuckled. Elder Shui, I've been to the desolate race. She asked, What are you trying to say? Yang Yi spoke softly. I haven't known them for long, but I know they are very courageous. It isn't just the core members of the desolate race. It's the same for the ordinary people there. Moreover, they don't hold a thread of fear to the eternal kingdom, and they are very united, extremely even. Elder Shui fell silent. Yang Yi walked over to her. Since I agreed to become the Sect Master, then I'll do it well. My style is one where if someone wants to become my enemy, then either that person dies or I die. We can die, and we can lose, but we cannot be cowards. He looked at the sky outside the abode and continued, Elder Shui, I need your help for two things. Firstly, help me select a few elite disciples or even inner court disciples. But they must be at the five-world realm. It doesn't matter if their cultivation isn't there so long as their strength is. I will lead them to personally hunt down the experts of the Soul Sect. Secondly, organize the strongest experts of the Sect and protect the Sect while awaiting my orders. Elder Shui spoke solemnly. No, that's too dangerous. Yang Yi suddenly interrupted Elder Shui. A qualified and strong sword cultivator should fight through countless dangers. The elite disciples and all the other disciples of our ancient sword sect have been living peaceful lives in the sect for too long. He gazed at Elder Shui and continued, That elite disciple at Five World Realm wasn't even able to stop a single attack of mine just now. That's something all of you should reflect on. Elder Shui was stunned speechless. Favorite Elder Shui fell silent when she heard him. Just as he'd said, the elite disciples of the ancient sword sect couldn't even stop a single attack of his. Was that normal? Of course not. Why was it that way? It was because their strength wasn't truly deserved. It really wasn't. Yang Yi said, Elder Shui, go do what I told you. Elder Shui nodded slightly and left. Outside his abode, Elder Shui looked up at the sky, and she felt that the ancient sword sect may really need a complete change. In the abode, Yang Yi entered the primordial pagoda. In the pagoda, Yang Yi gathered all the demon beasts at the ascension platform, and he felt rather happy when he saw them, because they had really been working hard. Since the beginning, these demons hadn't become lazy because of the various natural treasures and top-rate spirit energy within the pagoda. Conversely, they worked even harder, especially their tempering beneath the pool of lightning. The bodies of these demon beasts were at an extremely terrifying level. It could be said that even he couldn't pierce their defenses with ease without relying on Executor. While they were only at the Five-World Realm, their bodies were absolutely comparable to Lord Realm demons, and they could even fight Lord Realm demons. Especially the dragon, it was absolutely not inferior to a Lord Realm expert. These demon beasts weren't any weaker to the elders of the ancient sword sect. If Arya was here, their group would be even more extraordinary. Don't forget the primordial pagoda. Meanwhile, Sword Scroll's voice resounded abruptly from the side. Yang Yi gazed at her and she spoke softly. The primordial pagoda can give them armor made from primordial violet energy, and that primordial armor can be said to be boundlessly close to a divine treasure. So, their combat strength will be even more terrifying while protected by it. Yang Yi waved his right hand, and the primordial pagoda appeared before him. After it received Yang Ye's request, the pagoda shook, and then a ray of violet light enveloped all the demons. The violet light formed a strong armor around them. Yang Yi grinned at the sight of this. Their defenses will absolutely instill despair in their enemies. The demon beasts had extremely terrifying physical defenses, and now that they were protected by the armor, it could be said that their defenses were absolutely capable of instilling despair in others. Yang Yi spent some time with them, and then he went over to the pool of lightning. Over 100 dark void divine lightning were flashing through the pool, and the powerful might of lightning in the pool was absolutely suffocating. In the primordial pagoda, there were only two who could get close to the actual pool: Snowy and Lei Lin. Lei Lin was a sprite of lightning, so she was close to the dark void divine lightning, and the pool of lightning didn't reject her as well. So, she frequently went into the pool to play, and every round of fun would be accompanied by an improvement to her strength. Many sprites from the large universe were here in the primordial pagoda, and Yang Yi didn't try to manage them after they arrived in here. He didn't need to anyway. It was because they wouldn't harm this world. These sprites were scattered all over the primordial pagoda, and their existence made the world here even more perfect. Meanwhile, a small head suddenly emerged from the pool of lightning. It was Lei Lin. She grinned when she saw Yang Yi and leaped down. She was still so small. Yang Yi rubbed her head. "Did you have fun?" Lei Lin nodded and pointed at the pool of lightning. "Big sis gave me tasty stuff." As she spoke, she waved her little hand, and a ball of lightning appeared before Yang Yi. Sword Scroll spoke softly. "Lightning essence." "Lightning essence?" Yang Yi gazed at Sword Scroll, and the latter spoke softly. "A form of pure energy that's very beneficial to Lei Lin." Yang Yi nodded, and then he looked up at the pool of lightning. Obviously, it had a spirit of its own. Yang Yi didn't try to speak to it. He was already very satisfied with how things were now. It was willing to help him and the demon beasts temper their bodies, and that was enough. As for making it help him, he wasn't Snowy. In the clouds, Yang Yi looked down at the world below, and he could see the entire sword sect. There was no fighting or scheming here. Everything lived in harmony and equality. This was the place he wanted to protect. Around 2 hours later, Yang Yi left the pagoda. Elder Shue's voice came from outside the above. "I need a word, Sect Master." Yang Yi nodded slightly. "Come in." Once she entered, she glanced at Yang Yi and said, "We've located an outpost of the Soul Sect. It may be protected by a Lord Realm expert." Yang Yi asked, "What about the other thing I asked?" She looked to the side. "Come in." 9 people walked into the abode. 7 of them were at the 5-world realm, while the other 2 were at the 4-world realm. They bowed slightly to Yang Yi. "Sect Master," Elder Shui said. "Besides Feng Han, all of them are elite disciples." Feng Han. Yang Yi gazed at them. Meanwhile, a young man stepped forward. "Sect Master." Yang Yi sized up Feng Han, and his aura wasn't any weaker to the elite disciples. As if she knew what Yang Yi was thinking, Elder Shui explained, "He's a top disciple among the inner court disciples, and he only isn't an elite disciple because he doesn't want to be one. He didn't want to be an elite disciple." Yang Yi gazed at Feng Han. "Why?" Feng Han explained, "I've been in the inner court for a long time, and I have some friends I don't wish to leave. Moreover, regardless of whether I'm an elite disciple or inner court disciple, I'm still a disciple of the ancient sword sect. It makes no difference." Yang Yi grinned. "Well said." Yang Yi glanced at the others and continued, "Elite disciples and inner court disciples are no difference in essence. While there is a difference in status, I hope there is no difference in your hearts. Do not think you're better than someone else because you're an elite disciple or inner court disciple. Alright, I'll stop here. Elder Shui should have told you about our objective, right?" They nodded. Yang Yi said, "I won't allow any experts of the sect to follow us. We'll be relying on our own ability to return alive, and if we fail, then we deserve death. Let's go." Yang Yi led them out of the above. He suddenly stopped at the entrance and gazed at Elder Shui. "Don't send people with us. Elder Shui, you must get my 3rd request done well, because I think they may attack our sect at any moment." Elder Shui was quite hesitant. Yang Yi smiled. They're all elite or inner court disciples. If they still need to grow under your wings, then they are just trash. Once he finished speaking, Yang Yi led the others away and vanished into the sky. Elder Shui suddenly started smiling once Yang Yi left. In the clouds, 10 rays of light shot through the air and left long marks in the air. Yang Yi was naturally leading the group. Their destination was an ancient city known as Hill City. There were a few small clans in there, and they were subordinate clans of the ancient sword sect, though no one knew if they still were. Once Yang Yi and the others left, the ancient sword sect entered into high alert, and it even issued an emergency order for all its disciples to return to the sect. Such a situation could only be described as an emergency. All the disciples who received the order would rush back as soon as possible, even if they were in the war dimension. Along with the string of actions taken by the ancient sword sect, the Eternal Kingdom was peaceful no more. Around an hour later, Yang Ye's group arrived at Hill City. However, the entire city was empty when they arrived. It was empty. Yang Yi and the others' faces turned gloomy when they witnessed this from outside the city. They wondered if the enemy knew of their arrival and had retreated in advance. I'm afraid there's an ambush in there. Meanwhile, a sword cultivator by Yang Ye's side spoke abruptly. His name was Qing Yu, and he was one of the strongest among the elite disciples. Yang Yi glanced at the empty city and said, "Stay here. I'll go have a look." Qing Yu hurriedly said, "Sect Master, I'm afraid that's inadvisable. If you insist on going in, then let's go together." The others nodded to display they were willing to head inside together. Yang Yi smiled. "It's all right, just wait here for me." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Qing Yu and the others didn't stay on the spot and hurried over. Yang Yi arrived at the center of the city and scanned the surroundings with his divine sense. A short while later, he retracted it. There really wasn't anyone here. But Yang Yi suddenly started smiling. "Weren't you waiting for me to come inside? I'm here, so you can show yourselves." Qing Yu and the others instantly became fully vigilant when they heard him. "Ha ha!" Strange laughter suddenly resounded, and then the city shook. A short while later, a huge black cloud appeared above the city and enveloped it. Countless horrifying faces could be faintly seen throughout the cloud. Moreover, the entire city was filled with gloomy gusts of wind that were bone-piercingly cold. Qing Yu and the others hurriedly released their sword intent to resist the wind. Meanwhile, a hoarse voice came from the sky. "Sect Master Yi, we knew you were coming, so we prepared a great gift for you. We hope it'll please you." Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. Only the others behind him and Elder Shui knew that he would be coming here. Favorite at this moment, Yang Yi was even more certain that there was a mole in the ancient sword sect. Was it Elder Shui? The first person he suspected was Elder Shui, but it didn't take long for him to reject that thought. His instinct told him that Elder Shui would never do this. If it wasn't Elder Shui, then was it the Grand Elder? Or perhaps one of the elite disciples? It was quite impossible. These elite disciples had no prior knowledge of his intent to come here. Moreover, it was very difficult for them to send a message right under his nose. A short while later, Yang Yi shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He looked up into the clouds, and he saw a thin old man there. The old man was simply emaciated, but his eyes were extremely sharp. The old man stood in the clouds and looked down at Yang Yi. "I heard you didn't want any experts of the ancient sword sect to follow you here." Yang Yi smiled. "You're even aware of that. Amazing." The old man replied indifferently. "I know even more. For example, you're from Eternal Border, right?" Yang Yi smiled. "I'm a little curious about something. Did you merely put some people in the ancient sword sect? Or do you have people in the other large powers and even Eternal Border?" The old man replied, "What do you think?" Yang Yi replied, "Needless to say, I underestimated your soul sect." The old man replied, "In the beginning, we underestimated you a little too. Now I've come myself. So, even if you die, you should feel honored." Suddenly, 2 flying swords soundlessly appeared on both sides of the old man. However, They hadn't even gotten near him when two pitch-black hands grabbed them. The old man laughed coldly. I knew your flying swords are formidable, so I took precautions. You... Suddenly, the old man's voice stopped abruptly, and then he vanished on the spot. Hiss! A rift was cut open in space where the old man had been a moment ago. It had been cut open by a sword. Eternal light. The old man stared at Xianxia for over 1 kilometer away. I didn't expect you to have one more sword. If I hadn't been vigilant, I would have been tricked by you. As soon as he finished speaking, he tapped his finger forward. In an instant, a pitch-black umbrella floated above Xianxia, and then a strand of powerful energy rippled out from the umbrella. The energy caused the space around Xianxia to surge. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he issued a command in his heart. 2 flying swords shot at the umbrella, but they were bounced away before they could even get close. They couldn't get close to it at all. Meanwhile, strands of powerful energy rippled down. Qingyu and the others were about to take action, but Xianxia was faster. A ray of brilliant sword energy surged up into the air, and it blocked off the powerful energy coming from the umbrella. But it didn't take long for the sword energy to gradually start being dispersed. Meanwhile, the old man slapped his palm down. Bang! The entire city shook, and then the space around Xianxia rippled while waves of powerful energy rippled out from the space around him. Xianxia glanced at the surroundings. The energy around him was absolutely beyond the limits of his body's defenses. Once it got close to him, he would be obliterated. Xianxia didn't dare to continue concealing his strength. So, he took a step forward, and a wave of mysterious energy enveloped the surroundings. The sword domain. Once the sword domain appeared, the energy in the surroundings suddenly stopped. Meanwhile, a sword soundlessly slashed the black umbrella. Bang! The umbrella was blasted away. At the same time, 2 flying swords shot at the emaciated old man. This time, their speed and strength was beyond anything he'd displayed before this point in the battle. The old man was shocked by this, and he flashed away from where he stood. But those 2 swords were truly too fast. Hiss! Hiss! They pierced through his chest. However, Xianxia frowned because the old man's body suddenly exploded apart, and then the entire sword domain was filled with countless strands of black energy. The black energy had enveloped the entire area within the sword domain. A short while later, the entire sword domain shook as if it was about to explode. Xianxia frowned, and then a sword appeared in his grasp. Executor. Xianxia swung Executor forward. 11 overlap swings with the sword domain. As soon as the final swing descended, the black energy throughout the sword domain was instantly dispersed. At the same time, a black figure was blasted away. It was the old man. After it was enhanced by the sword domain, that attack had blasted the old man out of the black energy. Once the old man was blasted away, he immediately flashed out of Xianxia's sword domain. However, Xianxia was extremely fast and immediately appeared before the old man. Hiss! 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 3 flying swords shot forward first. Because the sword domain was active, their speed was so fast that even the old man at the Lord Realm couldn't dodge them and was forced to go head-on against them. A wisp of ghastly killing intent flashed through the old man's eyes. Suddenly, he waved his right hand, and the black umbrella appeared once more and instantly enveloped him. Hiss! 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 Meanwhile, the flying swords arrived. However, the flying swords failed to pierce through the umbrella. The umbrella was a divine treasure too, and it was very difficult for a divine treasure to destroy another divine treasure. However, another sword suddenly struck the black umbrella. As soon as this attack descended, the umbrella shook violently, and a shrill cry came from within it. After that, the umbrella exploded apart and transformed into fragments of energy that scattered through the air. As for the old man, he was blasted flying. Multiple mouthfuls of blood sprayed from the old man in midair, and there was disbelief in his eyes. He was at the Lord Realm, and his strength and every other aspect had an absolute advantage over Xianxia. However, after a few collisions, he realized that even if he used everything he had, he was still unable to do anything to Xianxia. Moreover, Xianxia's 3 flying swords and the sword Yang Yi held were truly too terrifying. The old man naturally recognized the sword Yang Yi held. It was the number 1 sword of Eternal Kingdom. The desire to retreat had arisen within the old man. And as soon as that happened, he didn't hesitate to decisively flee toward the sky. However, how could Yang Yi allow him to escape? 2 flying swords shot up into the air, and then they instantly appeared before the old man and stopped him from escaping. The old man was about to attack when a sword shot down from above him. Executor. The old man was horrified by the sight of this sword. At the critical moment, he disregarded everything and crushed a black talisman. In an instant, an ethereal figure appeared before him, and then it gently tapped its finger at Yang Yi. Bang! As soon as the finger descended, the space above the city shook, and then Yang Yi was blasted away like a cannonball. Moreover, his flying swords were instantly blasted over 500 kilometers away. However, they had spirits of their own and immediately returned to the sword gourd. Yang Yi wiped the blood off the corner of his mouth and looked over into the distance. The old man was still standing there, and there was an ethereal figure standing before the old man. Yang Yi couldn't discern the appearance of the figure. The figure faced Yang Yi while the old man behind it stared at Yang Yi and said, "Yi Yang, we'll meet again very soon." He vanished into the sky once he finished speaking. At this moment, the old man's heart hurt terribly. That ethereal figure was a trump card of his that the higher-ups had given him. He only had a single chance to use it. Yet now he'd used it. Not only had he used it, he hadn't been able to complete his mission. So, it could be said that he'd lost everything and gained nothing. In the sky above the city, Yang Yi glanced coldly at the ethereal figure, and it remained silent and gradually vanished once the old man had vanished. Meanwhile, Qing Yu and the others hurriedly went over to Yang Yi, and they were inwardly relieved when they saw that he was all right. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings, and his sword domain enveloped the city. He could sense everything in the city with absolute clarity. Suddenly, Yang Yi said, "Come with me." As soon as he gave the order, Yang Yi appeared within the city and walked off into the distance. It didn't take long for them to arrive at a corner of the city, and their expressions changed upon arriving there. There were countless corpses piled up in the corner. They were in layers that rose up in the dozens. All of them had no injuries on them. Their souls were gone. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings. "Go take a look." The sword cultivators behind him immediately vanished on the spot, and they returned to him a short while later. One of them spoke solemnly. "All the corners of the walls have piles like this. They should be the residents of the city, and all of them have had their souls extracted." Yang Yi looked up at the sky. "What are they trying to do?" Meanwhile, Qing Yu spoke abruptly. "They may do the same to other cities." Yang Yi was about to say something when the space before him shook, and then Elder Shui's voice came from there. A short while later, Yang Ye's face turned gloomy. Qing Yu asked, "What's wrong?" Yang Yi looked up at the sky. "Throughout the West region, around 50 cities have suffered the same fate as this one." Qing Yu spoke solemnly. "Why are they gathering so many souls?" Yang Yi shook his head. "I don't know." Qing Yu spoke solemnly again. "We must stop them. Otherwise, I'm afraid only our sect will remain in the entire West region." Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. Only the ancient sword sect would remain. Is that their true objective? Yang Yi fell silent for a short while and said, "Come with me." All of them left the city on their swords. The ancient sword sect. In the meeting hall, only Yang Yi, the Grand Elder, and Elder Shui remained. Yang Yi said, "I think every move we make is within their grasp." Elder Shui glanced at him. "You think we have a mole?" Yang Yi smiled. "Don't you think so too?" She replied, "If that's true, that person possesses quite a high status in the sect." Yang Yi remained silent. The Grand Elder and Elder Shui didn't say anything, and so the hall fell into a moment of silence. Yang Yi left the hall and looked into the distance. He had a beautiful view of the entire sect from here. Actually, he didn't really want to get involved in schemes like this. He preferred being direct. The issue with the ancient sword sect was more severe than he'd expected. There was definitely a mole in the ancient sword sect, and it may even be Elder Shui, the Grand Elder, or someone else with real authority in the sect. But he was helpless without definite proof. A short while passed before Yang Yi suddenly said, "I'm leaving for a while. I don't need anyone to follow me." Yang Yi vanished on the spot. Elder Shui and the Grand Elder fell silent. Yang Yi shot through the clouds on his sword, and his aura was completely concealed within the sword domain. Sword Scroll suddenly asked, "Where are you going?" Yang Yi replied, "I'm escaping the ancient sword sect for now. I may be the sect master, but don't you think that I know very little about it?" She fell silent for a short while and replied, "I thought you were leaving." Yang Yi smiled. "How can I just give up halfway?" Sword Scroll grinned and didn't say anything else. The war dimension. Yang Yi had gone to the war dimension. If he tried to deal with it from within the sect, it would definitely cause chaos and even instigate panic in the sect. At most times, killing may not resolve a problem, and he didn't even have a target yet. He had to rely on external forces. Two old friends. Yang Yi met Xing Biqing and Yi Zhibei at a mountain range, and they sat down cross-legged at its peak. Both of them listened to him in silence. A long time passed before Yang Yi shrugged. "That's it. So, what do you think?" They exchanged glances. In the end, Xing Biqing said, "Want me to be frank?" Yang Yi nodded. She spoke solemnly. "Leave the ancient sword sect." Yang Yi asked, "Why?" Xing Biqing hesitated for a moment and said, "I'll be honest. According to some information I received, someone is targeting the ancient sword sect. They didn't do so before this because that sect master of yours was still alive, and he could deter them while he was alive. However, he's gone now, and no one in your sect is at his level. Simply speaking, your strength doesn't conform to your status anymore." Yang Yi spoke solemnly. "The desolate race is still out there. Will the Eternal Lord just watch as internal strife arises within Eternal Kingdom?" Xing Biqing shook her head. "That won't happen. If your previous sect master was still alive and at his peak, then their attack may cause huge internal strife. Yet now, the ancient sword sect has lost its top expert. Do you understand what I mean? They were without a true leader." Yang Yi naturally understood what she meant. The ancient sword sect didn't have a true leader. It didn't have an expert with the ability to deter its enemies. As for him, many people didn't take him seriously at all. Yang Yi fell silent for a long time and said, "Your Xing clan and Yi clans both intend to just watch?" They nodded. Yang Yi asked, "What about the Soul Sect?" Xing Biqing shook her head. "We don't know. However, according to my inference, the Soul Sect has definitely met with the leaders of the various powers." She gazed at Yi Zhibei as she said that. To a certain extent, Yi Zhibei was the patriarch of the Yi clan now. Yi Zhibei glanced at Yang Yi and said, "They have. However, they spoke with the clan's ancestor, so I don't know what they spoke about." She hesitated for a moment and said, "I guess they came to some sort of agreement." Yang Yi fell silent. Xing Biqing said, "Brother Yi, in my opinion, I think the various powers of Eternal Kingdom have decided to divide up the ancient sword sect. After all, it occupies the entire West region. Divide up the ancient sword sect." Yang Yi laughed bitterly. He felt that being the sect master was absolutely troublesome. As soon as he took the position of patriarch, there were so many powers targeting the ancient sword sect. It made him wonder if he really was cursed. A short while passed before Yang Yi stood up and glanced at them. "As a friend, I can't make things too difficult for you. But you're my only friends in Eternal Kingdom, so if I don't do it to you, who will I do it to? So, I'll just do it." Both of them felt speechless. Yang Yi cracked a smile. "Tell me what I can do. I can't use the ancient sword sect's resources because I don't know who's an enemy in the sect." Xing Biqing spoke solemnly. "Do you really plan to stay?" Yang Yi nodded. Xing Biqing said, "You don't seem like a person who cares about authority." Yang Yi smiled. "I do as I want. Since I've chosen to become the sect master, I must do my best. Otherwise, if I give up upon encountering difficulties, how will I continue cultivating the sword? The path of the sword Tao is much more difficult than being the ancient sword sect's master. Moreover, it may make me cower from every small issue in the future. Xing Biqing glanced at Yang Yi with a rather complicated expression on her face. Seriously? Yang Yi smiled. I can't make things too difficult for you, so just tell me what I can do. Yi Zhibei suddenly asked. You want to find out who's the mole in the ancient sword sect? Yang Yi nodded. Not only that, I want to investigate the soul sect. However, the sect's information network is always slower than theirs. Yi Zhibei nodded slightly. I see. She exchanged a glance with Xing Biqing, and then Xing Biqing spoke solemnly. Go to the underground trade area. That underground trade? Yang Yi frowned slightly. Don't they just sell things? Xing Biqing explained. They sell information and some other things too. While our clans have our own information networks, we can't use them to help you. Our clans have prohibited us from interfering in the ancient sword sect's business. Moreover, even if we can use our networks, it will alert the enemy, and that won't be good for you. Yang Yi thought for a moment and nodded. I understand. He seemed to have thought of something at this point and asked, It should cost quite a bit to seek their help, right? Xing Biqing replied indifferently. You're the ancient sword sect's master right now, so just get the world crystals from the sect. Don't tell me you don't even have the authority to do that. Get it from the ancient sword sect. Yang Ye's eyes lit up. He'd almost forgotten this. After all, he was the sect master now, so wouldn't it be very easy to obtain some world crystals from the sect? However, he didn't plan to head back to the sect. Once he bade farewell to them, he went to the underground trade area. There were some people on the street, but just a few. Yang Yi went to the end of the street, and there was a black-robed man there. This black-robed man wasn't the same one he'd met the other day. Yang Yi spoke frankly. The Soul Sect and Ancient Sword Sect. The black-robed man fell silent for a moment and said, I refuse. Yang Yi frowned. Why? The black-robed man replied, I cannot answer that. Yang Yi glanced at the black-robed man and withdrew a fruit. It was a chaotic fruit. The gazes of all the people in the surroundings shot at Yang Yi, and someone exclaimed upon seeing the fruit, A chaotic fruit! My goodness! It really is a chaotic fruit. Isn't that impossible? Didn't it only exist during the ancient times? A chaotic fruit? Seriously? It really is a chaotic fruit? What a precious treasure! Yang Yi glanced at the fruit. He'd forcefully taken it from the chaotic fruit tree. The tree naturally refused, so he'd asked the primordial pagoda to get one for him. The primordial pagoda managed the primordial violet energy in the pagoda, so the tree naturally had to give it face. Otherwise, the pagoda may just stop its supply of primordial violet energy to the trees. Moreover, the primordial pagoda could force them out of the pagoda itself. When they were living in another's territory, they had to give face to the territory's owner. Once Yang Yi revealed the chaotic fruit, the entire area wasn't quiet anymore. All of the others surrounded him while desire and greed burned in their eyes. But none dared to take action. Since Yang Yi had dared to reveal such a treasure before so many people, it was obvious that he wasn't an ordinary person. Moreover, no one dared to openly steal during the trade area's business hours. The black-robed man was clearly unable to maintain his calm. After all, it was a chaotic fruit, and it was an extremely rare treasure. Yang Yi asked, So what about now? The black-robed man fell silent. Meanwhile, Yang Yi produced another chaotic fruit. The black-robed man hurriedly said, I'll do it. I'll do anything. The black-robed man led Yang Yi away from the street and arrived at a small house by the street. The house was only dimly lit and quite dark. There was just one wooden chair in the room. The black-robed man spoke softly, Please wait a moment. He withdrew a talisman and crushed it. Around 10 minutes later, a figure appeared on the chair before Yang Yi. That figure sat on the chair while covered beneath the darkness, so the figure's appearance was impossible to discern. Once the figure appeared, the black-robed man by Yang Ye's side immediately left. A short while passed before the person said, You even have chaotic fruits. I'm really surprised. The person's voice was quite hoarse. Obviously, it had been changed. Xianxia smiled. I'll just be frank. How much do you know about the ancient sword sect and soul sect? The figure replied, everything. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. Really? The figure nodded. Our network of information is the greatest throughout Eternal Kingdom. It isn't just the Eternal Kingdom, we know about the Desolate Race and Eternal Border too. Of course, we know about you as well. Xianxia smiled. It's amazing you're still alive when you know so much. The voice replied, you're amazing too. Xianxia asked, what do you mean? The figure said, because you're linked to existences that even we do not know about. Xianxia gazed at the figure for a long time and said, can you tell me about it? The figure shook its head. It's meaningless. 2 chaotic fruits are very precious, but to be honest, I don't really want to interfere in the business between the ancient sword sect and soul sect. Xianxia asked, why? The figure replied, because the soul sect is very good at doing things. Their current master is much smarter than their sect master from all those years ago. Allow me to be honest, there are things that all the other powers tacitly approve of, and it's even to the extent that some people in your ancient sword sect itself are happy to see it happen. You can't change anything. All you can do is leave the sect, and it's best to leave as soon as possible. You can't save this dumpster fire. Xianxia closed his eyes slowly. I want to know who's the mole in the ancient sword sect, and I want some information on the soul sect. The figure shook its head. I have some information on that, but I can't give it to you. Xianxia smiled. Even you are afraid of them? The figure replied, it isn't fear. It's just that we do not wish to get involved in it. Or I should say, it isn't worth it. The figure stood up at this point. I'll give you a free piece of information. Your identity isn't a secret to some people. Leave Eternal Kingdom now and you may be in time. Xianxia smiled. Is someone targeting me? The figure replied, what do you think? To be honest, the previous master of the ancient sword sect chose you as the next sect master just to use you. Xianxia was quite puzzled. Use me? The figure replied. He knew his lifespan was exhausted, and so the ancient sword sect would fall into chaos once he was gone. Besides your potential and talent, he chose you because of one other reason. It's because you're an uncertain variable. You're an uncertain existence. Anything can happen when you are involved. It may be good, bad, nice, or evil. Anything is possible. He wanted to give the sect one last chance. Xianxia didn't say anything. He thought for a moment and flipped his palm. There was a world-born fruit there. A world-born fruit. Xianxia gazed at the figure in silence. A long time passed before the figure suddenly smiled. You've really surprised me. Such a treasure was rare even in the ancient times. Xianxia said, I'm sure you know what I want. The figure replied, do you really plan to get yourself involved in this? Xianxia smiled. Since I've agreed to be the sect master, I naturally must do it well. The figure nodded and flicked a scroll over to Xianxia. A fair trade. A world-born fruit is worth the request you've made. This is what we know. Xianxia put the scroll away and flicked the fruit over to the figure. Xianxia turned around with the intent to leave, but the figure suddenly said, the sprite progenitor isn't with you, right? Xianxia smiled. Go figure. The figure said, we have no intent to take it for ourselves. Xianxia didn't say anything and left the house. The figure in the house spoke softly. Why get yourself involved in this? Xianxia left the underground trade area and unfurled the scroll. He had indifference all over his face as he read it. A long time passed before he sighed softly and left the war dimension. Once he left the war dimension, Xianxia rushed back to the ancient sword sect. Xianxia went to the sword cave once he arrived, and the old man was still lying there. According to others, the old man had been an elder in the past, and he'd made some mistakes which ultimately led him to being punished to guarding the sword cave. Xianxia went over to the old man. Meanwhile, the old man opened his eyes but didn't stand up and bow to Xianxia. Xianxia smiled. You're Gu Han, the 9th sect master of the ancient sword sect. You grew depressed from the death of your beloved, and so you left your position as sect master and lived in seclusion here to protect her. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly while a wisp of icy coldness arose within them. Xianxia sat by the old man's side. The old man's identity wasn't information he'd obtained from his previous trade. It was Sword Scroll who'd told him about the old man. Sword Scroll had been in the sect for far too long, so she knew its history even better than anyone in the sect. Since the ancient times until the day that she left the ancient sword sect, she'd been protecting the sect as a third party. Of course, she was watching it too. She knew everything here very well. The old man suddenly asked, "She chose you, right?" Xianxia nodded. The old man sighed. "It's the ancient sword sect that wronged her. Gu Feng lost his way." Gu Feng was the previous sect master. Xianxia asked, "Do you know about the situation that the sect is in right now?" Guhan shook his head. "I don't care about all of that." Xianxia said, "Me too." Guhan said, "Then why are you still here acting as the sect master? To be honest, you're in a horrible position. You don't hold true authority, nor have you gained the acknowledgement of the various powers throughout Eternal Kingdom. You're just someone they pushed forward to get through this period. You don't mind me being frank, right?" Xianxia smiled. I don't mind at all. Because it's all true." Guhan nodded. "Then why haven't you left? You're quite a capable person, and you'll have a pretty good future if you leave." Xianxia smiled. "Do you know what responsibility is?" Guhan gazed at Xianxia. Xianxia smiled. "I'm not like you. I try my best to fulfill my responsibilities. Since I promised her that I'll be the sect master, then I'll work hard toward that end. As for whether I get dragged down from my position in the future or I'm forced to flee for my life, it's all something for the future. I'll work hard to do well until that happens." Guhan glanced at Xianxia. "You plan to suffer here just because of your promise to her?" Xianxia shook his head. "If I knew about all the issues here in advance, I would have never accepted any of this. But it can't be helped. I've been swept into all of this now. I really can't bring myself to flee before a battle." Actually, he wanted to leave and ignore everything here too. However, he suddenly realized that the benefits of truly taking control of the ancient sword sect were great too. Of course, the true reason was that this whole thing was too aggrieving. It was his first day as sect master, and it was even for such a huge sect. But someone was trying to drag him into the dirt. It was a terrible insult and disrespect to him. So, wouldn't it be an absolute humiliation if he just shrunk back now? The sect master. He wasn't one to accept the position when they wanted him to, then leave when they asked it of him. Since he was the sect master, he planned to truly be the sect master. Meanwhile, Guhan suddenly said, "I can't help you." Xianxia smiled. "Do you know what will happen to the sect in the future? It will vanish from the West region, and countless disciples will die. Even if they survive, they will be without a home. The West region is the only part of Eternal Kingdom that focuses on the Sword Dao, so they will be without any support." He pointed at the Sword Cave. "All of this, the souls of all the sect's ancestors will vanish. This place will be trampled upon, and the souls of countless disciples will be extracted." Guhan remained expressionless. Xianxia smiled and stood up. "I heard that woman you liked didn't feel the same way." Bang! A wave of powerful sword intent slammed against Xianxia. Xianxia was pushed over 300 m back. Xianxia glanced at the cracks on his chest and looked up at the old man who was emanating ghastly killing intent. "I don't like judging others, but now, as the current sect master of the ancient sword sect, I'm going to judge you, the former sect master of the ancient sword sect. You're a coward. You couldn't face it then, and even after so many years you still can't face it now. You've been constantly avoiding it all." Xianxia walked into the sword cave once he finished speaking. The old man fell silent. In the sword cave, Xianxia went to Gunan. As soon as he saw Xianxia, Gunan asked, "What do you know?" Xianxia smiled. "I know a little about everything I should know." Gunan asked, "Then why haven't you left?" Xianxia spoke solemnly. "All of you have given up, right?" Gunan replied indifferently, "What else can we do? The sect doesn't have an extraordinary expert to deter them, and so we will become meat to be divided up by others. It isn't just our ancient sword sect, Even the D-clan and others before it suffered the same fate. Yang Yi gazed at Gu Nan for a long time, and then he turned around and walked away. Yang Yi suddenly stopped when he arrived at the exit. Reality is very cruel, but my sword will never submit to it, Gu Nan suddenly said. They are much stronger and greater in number than you've ever imagined. Yang Yi replied with a question. So, Gu Nan gazed at Yang Yi in silence. Yang Yi said, You're already giving up before you even try to fight. All of you are such embarrassments. Gu Nan sighed softly. We're no match for them. Yang Yi suddenly turned around and spoke angrily. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, you will show him the left because you're no match for him, right? Yang Ye's voice grew louder as he spoke. We are sword cultivators. We hold the sword, not mud. What's the point of cultivating the sword? To chop wood? No, it's to kill. If someone tries to act against them, we chop them. If we can't cut them down, that's fine too. But if we don't even have the courage to swing our swords, then what's the point of even holding them? You should just head home and do some embroidery with a needle. Yang Yi turned around once he finished speaking and was about to walk away. Suddenly, the entire sword cave shook, and then sword howls resounded incessantly. A moment later, numerous souls appeared within the sword cave. Yang Yi and Gu Nan were stunned by this. The souls within the sword cave represented the seniors of the ancient sword sect. They had been resting peacefully here, and they'd only left behind a strand of their soul or other similar things to preserve their inheritance for the future generation. They were unlike Yang Yi, and they felt a strong sense of belonging to the ancient sword sect. Just like Sword Scroll, many of them had grown up in the sect, and they treated it like their home. At this moment, all these sword cultivators were looking at Yang Yi. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man floated over to Yang Yi. You are really not bad. Yang Yi was about to speak when the souls in the surroundings transformed into rays of sword intent that swept at Yang Yi. Every single soul transformed into sword intent that was at least at the Lord realm. And there were around 50 souls here. All of the sword intent surged madly into Yang Yi. Gu Nan was stunned by this. These seniors of the ancient sword sect were helping Yang Yi by sacrificing themselves. They were giving the sword intent they'd cultivated over a lifetime to Yang Yi. In that way, Yang Yi wouldn't just be able to greatly improve his sword intent, he could experience numerous different types of sword intents and wills. It was absolutely beneficial to Yang Yi. Gu Nan fell silent. Obviously, these seniors agreed with Yang Yi and supported him. Around 15 minutes passed before only a single soul remained. It was a middle-aged man in an elegant robe. He hadn't vanished. After Yang Yi finished absorbing the sword intent, the middle-aged man spoke abruptly. The ancient sword sect has existed for at least 100,000 years. Yang Yi gazed at the man and waited for him to continue. The middle-aged man continued. Since the sect was founded, it has overcome countless dangers. Many of these dangers even brought the sect to the verge of destruction. But we held on and overcame it. The ancient sword sect can be destroyed. No organization has ever existed for eternity. If a day comes when my ancient sword sect does get destroyed, it wouldn't be anything surprising. However, we do not want the destruction of our sect to be one that came from submission and humiliation. The sect can be lost, but we hope it is lost with dignity and backbone. He floated over to Yang Yi and said, We do not know why someone as young as you has become the sect master, but we think what you said is correct. The elders and sword cultivators of the sect do not support you, but we, the past members of the ancient sword sect, support you. As soon as he finished speaking, his soul dispersed into the surroundings, and then a strand of sword energy surged into Yang Yi. Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. Strands of sword intent were ceaselessly rippling out of him. It was an extremely messy mass of various types of sword intents. Gu Nan frowned because that wasn't a good thing at all. Suddenly, the sword intent Yang Yi emanated started to transform. It wasn't that messy anymore. Some time passed, and then a strand of sword intent that contained bloody slaughter intent appeared here. It was Yang Ye's original slaughter sword intent. This sword intent was at the Lord realm. Moreover, Its purity far surpassed Gu Nan's expectations. It was extremely condensed and didn't seem like it had been forcefully risen to this level. Actually, it was because of Yang Yi and those seniors of the ancient sword sect. Firstly, Yang Ye's own sword intent had been very well tempered and condensed. After all, he'd been suppressing his own sword intent. As for those seniors of the ancient sword sect, no one in this sword cave was a weakling, so their sword intent was naturally very well tempered and condensed too. So, when their sword intent was absorbed by Yang Ye's sword intent, it could be considered as a union of the strong. Besides that, Yang Ye's sword Dao and sword heart were extremely solid too, so it was impossible for their will in the sword Dao to affect him. Thus, once he absorbed their sword intent, his sword intent remained pure as it grew stronger. Lord Realm's sword intent. Moreover, it wasn't his limit. Actually, it could rise even higher, but Yang Yi had forcefully suppressed it. He was only at the three-world realm right now, yet his sword intent was at the Lord Realm. It was already a huge gap. If it grew further, the gap between his sword intent and cultivation would be too huge, and that would definitely cause problems for him. It was best to take one step at a time. Around an hour later, Yang Yi took a deep breath and left the sword cave. Meanwhile, there was a new person following him, and it was Gu Nan. Outside the sword cave, Yang Yi glanced at where Gu Han had been, and it was empty. Yang Yi did say anything and just vanished into the distance. The ancient sword sect. Meeting hall. Yang Yi was seated at the seat of the host, and below him was Gu Nan, the Grand Elder, Elder Shui, and 3 other elders. They were Elder Mo Yen, who was in charge of the Judgment Hall, Elder Xianxia, who was in charge of the sect's secret forces, and Elder Li Xiang, who was in charge of the sect's information infrastructure. Coupled with Gu Nan, who was guarding the sword cave, and the 2 other elders, practically all the higher-ups of the sect were here. There were 7 Lord Realm experts here. The sect did have some other forces in the shadows, but Yang Yi didn't know much about them. It could be said that while the ancient sword sect didn't have a top-rate expert like its previous sect master, it still had its foundation. The hall was very silent, and the atmosphere here was quite strange. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings and said, "I summoned all of you here to deal with some things." They still remained silent. Yang Yi smiled. "I know that all of you made me the sect master just to let things follow its course. Or I should say that you hoped for me to just be the sect master while it goes through this difficult period. Right?" The elders glanced at him and remained silent. Yang Yi said, "I don't care what all of you think. Since I chose to be the sect master, I intend to do well. Now, the ancient sword sect is being targeted by the various powers, and some others are scheming from within it. Can be said that the sect is at its most dangerous moment. In order to deal with external threats, internal threats should be resolved first. So, I called all of you here to resolve such internal threats." All of them remained silent. Yang Yi smiled, and then he gazed at the Grand Elder and Elder Shui. "Grand Elder, Elder Shui, wait, I should call you the Soul Guardians." The Grand Elder and Elder Shui fell silent for a short while. In the end, Elder Shui spoke indifferently. "So you know everything?" Yang Yi nodded. "I know everything I should know." Elder Shui glanced at the surroundings and said, "The sect master passed away, and the soul sect attacked. Our ancient sword sect has no way to resist them." Yang Yi smiled. "Is that the reason you surrendered?" Elder Shui glanced at Yang Yi. "The soul sect promised that everyone from the ancient sword sect can remain in eternal kingdom, and the ancient sword sect will remain the ancient sword sect." Yang Yi grinned. "But the ancient sword sect must become their subordinate sect, right?" Elder Shui looked him in the eyes. "Then what do you think we should do? Fight the soul sect to the death? The strongest expert in our sect is just a grade 3 Lord Realm expert, and the soul sect has experts beyond the Lord Realm. How are we supposed to fight them?" "With the lives of countless disciples from our sect." Yang Yi replied. "What about the clans that are subordinate to the ancient sword sect?" Elder Shui said, "They aren't attacking the disciples of the sect, right?" Yang Yi smiled. "So, you mean we should sacrifice those clans that are subordinate to us in order to guarantee the safety of the sect?" Elder Shui closed her eyes slowly. "It's the best outcome." Yang Yi glanced at the other elders. What do all of you think? They fell silent. Yang Yi smiled. Since we're on this topic, I'll be frank. If you plan to stay in the sect, then stand over on my side. They fell silent. In the end, only Gu Nan and one other black-robed elder went over to Yang Ye's side. Only the two of them. As for those with actual authority in the sect, none of them chose to take his side. Elder Shui looked Yang Yi in the eyes. I'll give you one last chance to leave the sect. Yang Yi grinned. Elder Gu Nan, gather all the disciples here. I have something to announce. Gu Nan nodded slightly and walked away, but a few auras suppressed him before he could even reach the exit. Yang Yi walked over to Elder Shui and the Grand Elder. He looked them in the eye and said, I'll only say this once. I don't want to take action right now, so don't force my hand. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind taking your heads and turning them into decorations for the sect's entrance. Elder Shui looked him in the eye and didn't say a word. Yang Yi glanced coldly at them. The ancient sword sect belongs to everyone in the sect. If all the disciples of the sect choose to surrender to the soul sect and follow all of you, then I'll leave immediately and never interfere in the ancient sword sect's business again. Now, I'm giving them the right to choose. It's best if you don't stop me from doing this. Otherwise, I can guarantee that you'll lose your heads before the soul sect comes to the ancient sword sect. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword floated by his side. It was Executor. Extremely solemn expressions appeared on all their faces when they saw it. It was the number 1 sword of Eternal Kingdom, and it was once the number 1 sword of the ancient sword sect. Even now, the ancient sword sect still had a statue of this sword outside. Gu Nan left the hall. Yang Yi remained seated at the seat of the sect master, and no one in the hall dared to attack him. They were naturally aware of how Yang Yi had almost killed a Lord Realm expert from the Soul Sect at Hill City. They had started to fear this young sect master, whom they'd pushed up into this position. It didn't take long for the outer court disciples, inner court disciples, and elite disciples to arrive in the hall. The hall wasn't large enough, so they had to stand outside as well. Everyone in the sect was here. Yang Yi gazed at these disciples and said, I presume Elder Gu Nan has briefed all of you about the situation. Now, you have the right to choose your own future. If you choose me, it represents you'll have to fight, and you may die in battle. If you choose Elder Shui's side, I will leave and never interfere in the ancient sword sect's business. A moment of silence ensued, and then the 9 elite disciples who led the group suddenly knelt down. We swear our loyalty to you, sect master. A moment later, the other disciples behind them knelt down as well. We swear our loyalty to you, sect master. Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. Grand Elder, Elder Shui, and all of you elders of the Soul Sect, you're not welcome here. So, please fuck off. Please fuck off. Yang Ye's voice resounded through the hall and carried no emotion at all. Elder Shui looked him in the eye. Do you think this is good for the sect? As she spoke, she glanced at the disciples of the sect. How will our sect fight against the Soul Sect? How will we fight the other powers outside the West region? Are we really going to allow the sect to vanish from history? Meanwhile, Gu Nan suddenly sighed softly. Aksu, you're doing this for the sake of the sect too. But have you thought about what the other powers would think of us once we submit to the Soul Sect? Our ancestors and seniors won't be able to rest in peace within their graves. Elder Shui laughed coldly. At least we'll still have a chance to rise up again. Yet now, she pointed at Yang Yi. He's only at the 3-world realm. While he has the strength to kill Lord Realm experts, can he kill experts above the Lord Realm? If you stay with him, the consequence will be suffering a horrible death, and you'll never have another chance to rise up again. Gu Nan wanted to say something else, but Yang Yi walked over to Elder Shui. Elder Shui, I want to ask you something. Does your confidence come from the previous sect master? So, once he's dead, you've lost all your confidence in the ancient sword sect. Elder Shui gazed at Yang Yi. You're too young. The ancient sword sect isn't being targeted by the soul sect alone. The other powers cover the sect too. The previous sect master forcefully kept himself alive for many years in the hopes that someone in the sect would be able to surpass the Lord Realm. Unfortunately, he was disappointed. No one in our sect accomplished it throughout the years. Yang Yi asked, "So you think the sect is beyond saving?" Elder Shui gazed at Yang Yi and remained silent. Yang Yi shook his head. "Elder Shui, I'm only willing to stand here and talk to you, because I can sense that you may have really sided with the Soul Sect for the ancient sword sect's sake. However, have you thought about the fact that we are sword cultivators? We're sword cultivators." Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings. "We cultivate the sword. If we really surrender for our survival, then will our sword still have backbone? Will it have dignity? A sword without backbone and dignity can never be sharp." Elder Shui refuted. "Backbone? Dignity? But have you thought of their lives?" Yang Yi suddenly gazed at the disciples of the sect. "Answer me. Would you rather die on your feet or live on your knees?" "Die on our feet." Countless disciples shouted loudly like thunderclaps that resounded through the sect. Elder Shui turned slightly pale. The other elders' faces were quite unsightly too. Yang Yi returned to his seat. "Elder Shui, Grand Elder, and all of you who have joined the Soul Sect, including the disciples down below, everyone has their own choice, and I won't force you to make the same choice as me. Now all of you can leave safely, and we won't stop you. But we won't show any mercy when we meet again." The hall fell into silence. "Leave." Gu Nen hesitated to speak. Obviously, once Elder Shui and the others left, the sect would grow even weaker. After all, Elder Shui and the others were the backbone of the sect. Once they left, the ancient sword sect wouldn't just be in a terrible situation, it would be in a hopeless situation. Elder Shui gazed at Yang Yi for a long time and said, "I feel slightly regretful now." She turned around and left with the other elders. It didn't take long for everyone in the hall to leave, and only Yang Yi, Gu Nan, and Sword Scroll, who just showed herself, remained in the hall. Gu Nan glanced at Sword Scroll, bowed slightly, and didn't say a word. Sword Scroll's status in the sect wasn't any inferior to a sect master. She was a super divine treasure who'd made countless contributions to the sect. Sword Scroll walked over to Yang Yi. "I shouldn't have asked you to take over." Yang Yi shook his head. "I had my own considerations too. I agreed because I felt I could take control of the sect and make it a powerful source of support for myself. Unfortunately, I didn't expect it to be so complicated." Sword Scroll was hesitant to say something. Yang Yi smiled. "Don't worry. Since I've chosen to do this, I'll do it well." She spoke softly. "Do you have any plans?" Yang Yi nodded slightly. "I have my own backing as well." Sword Scroll seemed to have thought of something, and the worry on her face vanished. There really were few in the world who possessed backing that was stronger than Yang Yi. Yang Yi gazed at Gu Nan. "Senior Gu Nan, I need you to help me manage the sect's affairs from now on." Gu Nan glanced at Yang Yi and nodded. "All right." Yang Yi gazed at Sword Scroll. "You take control of the sect's information infrastructure. I need to know what I want to know." She nodded slightly. "Understood." She turned around and left. Gu Nan left too. Only Yang Yi remained in the hall. Yang Yi glanced at the sky outside. "I need to get some help." A short while later, he left the ancient sword sect. He concealed his departure so no one was aware of it. This time, he went to the underground trade area in the war dimension again. In the small dark house, he met the same mysterious figure. Yang Yi flicked a fruit over to the figure. It was a chaotic fruit. Yang Yi said, "You can help me find a few people, right?" The figure replied, "Tell me about them." Yang Yi quickly spoke a list of names. A long time passed before the figure said, "You'll have to pay extra if some of them aren't in Eternal Kingdom." Yang Yi nodded. "All right," the figure asked. "What should we do upon locating them?" Yang Yi smiled. "Tell them to come see me at the ancient sword sect." The figure nodded slightly. "Sure." Yang Yi turned around and was about to leave when the figure suddenly said, "I have an offer you might be interested in." Yang Yi stopped and gazed at the figure. The figure said, "I received news that you went to that abyss with the eldest young miss of the Xing clan." Yang Yi frowned slightly. "You're targeting that abyss?" The figure shook its head. "How could we dare to do that? How could they dare?" Yang Yi glanced at the mysterious figure. Do you know what lies beneath it? The figure shook its head again. It's a mysterious place, and it's one of the few places in the world that we cannot step foot into. You've been there and survived to come back. We want you to make another trip there, and in return, Yang Yi suddenly shook his head. Sorry, I refuse. Yang Yi vanished on the spot. The black-robed figure sighed softly, and then it vanished on the spot as well. Yang Yi left the house. Go to the abyss? That was an absolute joke. He wasn't tired of living. Just thinking about how he'd been able to escape that day filled him with a lingering fear. It was an absolutely dangerous place. Once he left the area, Yang Yi left the war dimension and returned to the ancient sword sect. At this moment, all the disciples of the sect had returned to the sect as he'd ordered. Moreover, he allowed the sect's subordinate clans and organizations to come take shelter in the sect too. Once Sword Scroll took control of the sect's information networks, it didn't take long for him to locate traces of the Soul Sect. A short while later, Yang Yi and the other 9 disciples from that day left the sect without anyone noticing. Once they left the sect, Sword Scroll went to the sword cave on her own. She went to the deepest parts of it, and there was a room there. In the room was a single green cushion, and on the cushion was a piece of wood. Or to be more precise, it was a piece of soul wood. Sword Scroll walked over to the cushion and picked up the wood. She gazed at it for a long time before she left the room with it. At this moment, the West region seemed quite strange. The residents of countless cities had just vanished inexplicably, and it caused the West region to seem like only the ancient sword sect remained here. As for what was going on in the West region, the other regions of Eternal Kingdom didn't show any response. On this day, Yang Yi led the other 9 disciples to an ancient city, and terrified voices frequently resounded from it. Qingyu spoke solemnly. We aren't too late. Yang Yi nodded. Be careful. Qingyu and the others nodded, and then they shot into the city. At this moment, some black-robed figures were madly extracting the souls of the city's residents. They were being extracted alive. Once Qingyu and the others entered the city, sword howls resounded incessantly. How dare you! Suddenly, a furious shout resounded from the distant sky, and then a pitch-black hand stretched out from there and clawed at Qingyu's group. Meanwhile, Yang Yi looked up at the hand, and then a flying sword shot at it. Hiss! The hand was instantly sliced into 2. An astounded voice came from the sky. You! So fast! As soon as the voice finished resounding, a block-robed old man appeared in the sky above the city. The old man stared at Yang Yi. You're the new sect master of the ancient sword sect. Yang Yi nodded. I am. The old man laughed coldly. I heard you just took the position of sect master. Yang Yi nodded again. You're right. Do you have something to say about it? A wisp of ridicule curled up on the old man's lips. I bet you won't last a month. Want to make that bet? Yang Yi thought for a moment and replied. I bet you're about to lose your head. Want to make that bet? The old man's eyes narrowed slightly. I heard you have the strength to kill Lord Realm experts, but I don't really believe that. Come on. I'm not at the Lord Realm yet. I'm just at the peak of the 5-world realm. Let me see if you really... Suddenly, the sword gourd trembled by Yang Ye's waist, and then a flying sword shot off into the sky. The black-robed man's voice stopped abruptly. The old man stared at Yang Yi while disbelief filled his eyes. A cut gradually split open on his throat, and it grew larger and larger. Yang Yi gazed at the black-robed old man and said, The 5-world realm is so weak. No, wait, it isn't your fault. I'm too strong. After instantly killing the black-robed old man, 2 flying swords shot out from the sword gourd. They shot into the city, and then black heads flew up into the air incessantly. A few dozen fountains of blood surged up into the air. It didn't take long for Qingyu and the others to return to Yang Ye's side. Yang Yi glanced at the ancient city. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man walked over, and he bowed slightly to Yang Yi. Thank you. He was the governor of the city, and it was a subordinate power of the ancient sword sect. Yang Yi nodded slightly. All of you can go to the ancient sword sect or stay here. Just notify us if they attack. Yang Yi vanished on the spot with the others. He didn't return to the ancient sword sect. Yang Yi led Qing Yu and the others to a boundless mountain range that was impossible to see the end of. There was nothing unusual about it when looked at from high above. Yang Yi glanced at Qing Yu and the others. Wait for instructions from the sect. Qing Yu hesitated for a moment and said, Let us follow you. Yang Yi shook his head. I'm fine. Remember that you are all elite disciples of the sect, and you are the future pillars of support in the sect. You need the ability to do things on your own. Qing Yu and the others bowed slightly to Yang Yi. Yang Yi didn't say anything else and just entered the mountain range. A short while later, Qing Yu and the others vanished on the spot. Yang Yi went deep into the mountain range below, and it didn't take long for him to stop. He gazed at the mountains in the distance, and then he closed his eyes slowly while a seal appeared before him. The universe seal. The universe seal shot up into the clouds, and then a ray of mysterious energy rained down. Hiss! 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 Strange sounds resounded through the area, and then a pitch-black city appeared before Yang Yi. At the same time, numerous divine senses instantly enveloped Yang Yi. Sect Master Yi, you've arrived. Meanwhile, a voice came from within the city, and then a middle-aged man in a dark violet robe walked out of the city. A Lord Realm expert. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings and said, You've really kept your sect well hidden. The middle-aged man smiled. It can't be helped. We have to keep a low profile until we've gained success, right? Yang Yi glanced at the city. I think we can stop wasting time. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 flying swords shot forward. With his Lord Realm sword intent to enhance them, their speed and strength had grown even more terrifying. The middle-aged man was prepared for this. So, a pitch-black chain suddenly shot out from him before the swords even arrived before him. The chains formed a huge black shield of chains. Clang! Clang! 2 sharp clangs resounded and Yang Ye's swords flew back into the sword gourd. The middle-aged man chuckled from behind the shield. Sect Master Yi, it is the world that wished for the ancient sword sect to step down from history, just like the D clan did all those years ago. It's not something a single person can change. Moreover, according to my knowledge, you're not even from the ancient sword sect, so you can just leave, and my soul sect will not target you. You won't. Yang Yi grinned. If I didn't have some skill, I would have probably died when you schemed against me with those elders of the ancient sword sect, right? Yang Yi suddenly took a step forward and swung his sword. It struck against the chain shield, and it was slashed into bits. Executor. Executor could destroy divine treasures. Once he destroyed the pitch-black chains, the middle-aged man retreated to the city walls. Suddenly, a few powerful auras rippled out. Yang Yi strode forward and swung his sword once more. Hiss! It seemed like it would slice the world apart. The auras before Yang Yi were instantly sliced apart, but it only took a moment for a few black figures to leap out of the city. Bang! Bam! Bang! A few muffled explosions resounded, and then Yang Yi was blasted over 1 kilometer away. As soon as he stopped himself, a spear pierced through space and instantly arrived before him. Yang Yi swung Executor at it. Bang! The spear shook violently and cracked open while Yang Yi was blasted away again. As soon as he descended to the ground, a huge palm descended from the sky. Boom! The area Yang Yi stood at exploded apart and was obliterated. However, that wasn't the end of it. An ethereal figure flashed by, and then a wave of energy swept out from the city. The wave of energy instantly slammed against the obliterated expanse of space. Boom! The expanse of space shook, and then a curled-up figure was blasted out of it. It was Yang Yi. Yang Yi stopped himself 3 kilometers away, and the expanse of space before him had been repaired by the laws of the world. On the walls of the ancient city, the middle-aged man had 4 black-robed figures on his sides. All of them were at the Lord Realm. 5 Lord Realm experts. The middle-aged man smiled. Sect Master Yi, you're too confident. Yang Yi wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth and smiled. Indeed. The middle-aged man walked over to Yang Yi. Sect Master Yi, if I'm being honest, Then if it's a one-on-one battle, then you're definitely the strongest beneath the Lord Realm in Eternal Kingdom. Not to mention beneath the Lord Realm, even Lord Realm experts are no match for you. But I'm sorry to say that we won't fight you in single combat. We plan to take your life in the ancient sword sect once the sect master emerged from closed-door cultivation. But it seems like we don't have to wait until then. As soon as he finished speaking, the others by his side suddenly emanated powerful auras that enveloped Yang Yi. Yang Yi had an absolute advantage if it was a one-on-one battle against a Lord Realm expert. After all, his strength wasn't any weaker than the Lord Realm. Moreover, his sword intent was at the Lord Realm now, and he had numerous treasures. But he was facing 5 Lord Realm experts now. Yang Yi wasn't strong enough to fight 5 on his own. But Yang Yi wasn't alone. Yang Yi glanced at them, and then a dragon roar resounded while a colossus appeared in the sky. The primal true dragon. The dragon's huge body covered the entire city. Moreover, a wave of dragon pressure rippled down incessantly from the sky and slammed down against the city. A peak 5 world realm demon. The middle-aged man's face instantly turned gloomy when he saw the primal true dragon. But that wasn't even the end of it. Another powerful demon's aura appeared, and then a demon with an axe appeared behind Yang Yi. It was just the size of a human in the beginning, but it didn't take long for the demon to grow larger and larger. In just a short while, it was over 300 m tall. It was a towering demon. It was Oxy, of course. Moreover, there was another demon beside Oxy. It was the primal vicious tiger. Yang Yi didn't summon the other demons because just the 3 of them were enough. They were completely enough. Yang Yi glanced at the dragon. "Blast that city apart for me." A dragon roar resounded, and the dragon slammed itself at the city. The middle-aged man's expression changed drastically. "Stop it!" 2 of the black-robed figures by his side shot up into the air and charged at the dragon. Suddenly, Yang Yi took a step forward, and then a mysterious wave of energy appeared in the surroundings. The sword domain. As soon as the sword domain appeared, the middle-aged man was shocked, and then 2 flying swords soundlessly appeared before him. They'd appeared out of thin air. At this critical moment, the middle-aged man's body vanished, and only his soul remained. Once he only had his soul, a powerful wave of soul energy rippled out from him. Bang! Bang! The flying swords were blasted away, and even the space within the sword domain surged. Yang Yi frowned slightly as he wondered what the heck that energy was. Yang Yi didn't give it too much thought and just took a step forward before swinging his sword at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man made a grasping motion with his right hand. In an instant, a black hand condensed into form by black energy grabbed Yang Yi's executor. But in just an instant, the black hand was sliced into bits. A moment later, Yang Yi released executor, and it transformed into a ray of light that flashed through the sword domain. Bang! A wave of powerful sword energy erupted within the sword domain, and then a soul was instantly blasted into the city. Yang Yi was about to attack again, but the other 2 black-robed figures didn't stand by idly. 2 waves of black energy erupted within the sword domain. Their target wasn't Yang Yi but the sword domain. They wanted to destroy his sword domain. However, they had clearly overestimated themselves, and as soon as the waves of energy erupted, 2 flying swords had sliced them into bits. Yang Yi dispersed the sword domain, and Oxy suddenly charged forward. The primordial axe of creation descended. Boom! One of the Lord Realm experts was blasted away. Meanwhile, the other 2 black-robed Lord Realm experts were keeping the dragon busy. But the dragon was actually able to hold its own against both of them by relying on its powerful physical body. Yang Yi glanced at the dragon, and then he gazed at Oxy. Oxy nodded slightly, and then he hurled the axe at the city. Hiss! Everywhere the axe passed, space was blasted into bits. Right when it was about to enter the city, a strand of black energy shot out from the city and blasted the axe away. Oxy hurriedly caught the axe, but as soon as he touched it, he was immediately blasted 3 kilometers away. At this moment, Oxy's entire body had cracked open, especially Oxy's right hand. Blood was streaming out of it, and its bones were visible. Meanwhile, a woman in a black dress appeared on the city walls. The woman glanced coldly at Yang Yi, and then she raised both her hands. In an instant, a wave of mysterious energy enveloped him. In an instant, Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of disbelief in them. A domain. It was a domain. Domain. Yang Yi sensed a domain, but he didn't know what domain it was. Meanwhile, the woman didn't attack him. She looked up at the dragon in the sky above, and then she made a grasping motion at it. Bang! The dragon seemed like it had been struck by a sledgehammer and crashed to the ground. Spatial energy. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. Now, he understood the domain she possessed. It was space, a space domain. Her attack hadn't been a pure attack completed with space, and it could be said that her strength had completely surpassed three-dimensional space. Or to be more precise, she had mastered space that surpassed three-dimensional space. It was a different form of space. On the city walls, she glanced coldly at Yang Yi, and then she tapped a finger at Yang Yi. It was like a rock descending into a lake, and the space around Yang Yi started to ripple. Yang Ye's expression changed drastically because the space there had actually started to burn. It was burning on its own. The energy coming from it even made Yang Ye's heart palpitate slightly, and he shot over 100 m back. However, no matter where he went, the burning space followed him. Or to be more precise, he was trapped in there. It was a very strange ability. Yang Yi knew he had no choice but to break through it by force. Yang Yi flipped his palm and Executor released a wave of sword energy. Hiss! 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 In an instant, the space around him was sliced into bits by Executor. Since he couldn't avoid it, he just destroyed it. His attack had sliced open the space there. However, the woman suddenly appeared before him. Yang Ye's flying sword shot at her. Meanwhile, the woman didn't dodge and allowed it to strike. Yang Ye's sword struck. It cut through her from top to bottom. Even space had been sliced open. However, she was still there without suffering any real damage. It was a very strange scene. She just stood there as if she was in this part of space, yet she seemed like she wasn't as well. Meanwhile, she suddenly attacked. She just gently slapped her palm at Yang Yi like a child trying to slap another child for fun. Carried no strength or made any fluctuations in space. Yang Yi moved 30 m back again when facing this strange attack. But the attack still remained before him. An instant later, Yang Ye's sword descended, but it still hit nothing. His sword had pierced through her hand and sliced space open, but her hand remained unharmed. Conversely, her palm pressed against his chest. Bam! The space around Yang Yi instantly shattered, and then Yang Yi was blasted over 3 kilometers away. While his figure was blasted away, the space around him started to condense in layers while strands of mysterious energy ceaselessly damaged his body. Moreover, the energy actually ignored his sword intent. Yang Yi hurriedly activated the sword domain, and then he immediately sensed something different. It was a difference in this energy, or it should be said that he'd sensed the source of it. Hiss! Hiss! Along with 2 flying swords shooting through the sword domain, something within it seemed to be sliced apart, and then the woman returned to the city walls at the same time. There was an obvious injury on her palm. She glanced at her palm and looked down at Yang Yi. No wonder they were no match for you. Yang Yi stretched his body, and with the help of the primordial pagoda, his body had recovered completely. His recovery speed was beyond terrifying. Yang Yi looked up at her and said, "A space domain?" She spoke indifferently. "The ancient sword sect will be removed from history, and no one can stop it." The other Lord Realm experts returned to the city. Meanwhile, a wave of mysterious energy enveloped the city, and then Yang Yi watched as the city gradually turned ethereal and vanished. It had just vanished. There were no traces of it. Yang Yi gazed at the mountain range before him, and then he activated the sword domain, but even the sword domain couldn't help him locate the city. The city was gone. He knew that the city had been moved somewhere else. Yang Yi didn't stay a moment longer and just left with the others. Yang Yi returned to the ancient sword sect, and it was on high alert now. There were only a few people in the hall, and all of them were the few remaining higher-ups of the sect. Yang Yi spoke solemnly. I was at an ancient city. I don't know if that's their main base. If it is their main base, then they aren't that terrifying. But if that wasn't their main base, then the Soul Sect may be much, much stronger than we ever imagined. Gunin spoke solemnly. Actually, the Soul Sect isn't the most terrifying. It's the other powers. The Soul Sect has definitely come to some sort of agreement with them, so it's very likely that they secretly helped the Soul Sect in the Soul Sect's battle against us. That will be lethal for us. Yang Yi nodded. We need help. Gunin laughed bitterly. Where will we get help? If it were in the past and our previous sect master was still alive, then perhaps someone would take our side. But now the previous sect master has perished, and the ties of the past have been lost. All of these things only last while a person is still alive. Yang Yi didn't say anything. He walked to the exit of the hall and looked up at the sky. He spoke softly. We'll have help. Gu Nan and the others exchanged glances. They couldn't figure out this sect master of theirs because he was too mysterious. A short while later, Yang Yi gazed at Sword Scroll. How's the situation right now? She replied solemnly. The desolate race hasn't made any movements, nor has there been any movement from Eternal Kingdom's war dimension. As for the Soul Sect, they are still ceaselessly extracting souls. However, it's only limited to the West region, and they aren't active in the other regions. Obviously, they are targeting us. Yang Yi smiled. Anyway, does the ancient Sword Sect have any especially good treasures? Gu Nan and the others had rather weird expressions on their faces. They wondered if this fellow was planning to take the sect's treasures and flee. Sword Scroll clearly understood what Yang Yi meant and replied, the ancient Sword Sect occupies the West region, and it's a huge territory. Moreover, I'm sure you're aware that Eternal Kingdom has that spirit vein, right? The divine vein. Yang Yi nodded. Sword Scroll spoke solemnly. The North, South, East, and West regions are on that divine vein, and the entire Eternal Kingdom can be considered to be relying on that divine vein. The Soul Sect doesn't want the treasures of the sect. It wants the territory above that spirit vein. After all, possessing this territory is equivalent to possessing a part of that divine vein. Only by possessing that will they be able to gain a certain level of authority to make decisions in the Eternal Kingdom. That's what they really want. She paused for a moment and continued. As for why the other powers chose to work with them, it's naturally because the previous sect master has perished. Coupled with the fact that the Soul Sect made Elder Shui and the others take their side, it can be said that if you hadn't been here, they would have obtained the ancient Sword Sect at the lowest cost, and the other powers would have been able to gain a lot without doing anything. Yang Yi smiled. The ancient Sword Sect is in a hopeless situation. Sword Scroll glanced at Yang Yi and said, you should be able to sense the spirit energy here, especially in the sect master's abode. The spirit energy there is the densest, and it isn't any inferior to the world within the primordial pagoda. Yang Yi laughed bitterly. He suddenly realized that he'd never sat still since he arrived here. At the moment he became the sect master, he thought his luck had changed, and it was a blessing from the heavens. However, he hadn't expected that it was no blessing. It was a curse to kill him. Sword Scroll walked over to Yang Yi and spoke softly. No matter what you decide, I will stay by your side. Yang Yi glanced at her. He knew that she was telling him that she would leave with him if he chose to leave. Leave the ancient Sword Sect? Yang Yi shook his head. He would be a true coward if he left now. Moreover, so many people in the sect had stayed to follow him, so if he left now, then what about all of them? Some things and responsibilities had to be done well once they were accepted. Moreover, his intuition told him that even if he left the ancient Sword Sect, he wouldn't be able to escape this vortex. Those powers and people of Eternal Kingdom were aware of his true identity. It could be said that countless experts would try to stop him if he tried to leave Eternal Kingdom now. Perhaps they still hadn't figured out how they would act against him, but that day would come sooner or later. Suddenly, a woman in a black dress appeared in the sky above the sect. In an instant, countless strands of sword intent surged up into the air and enveloped her. The sect's sword formation. She looked coldly down below. While the sword intent had enveloped her, She wasn't affected by it at all. She just ignored it all. Meanwhile, Yang Yi left the hall, arrived in the air, and glanced at her. Needless to say, her space domain was quite mysterious. She glanced at Yang Yi and said, "The Lung clan's patriarch, Yi clan's patriarch, Lu clan's patriarch, and my soul sect's exalt request your presence." Yang Yi was shocked. "Me?" She replied indifferently, "Yes." Yang Yi thought for a moment and asked, "Can I refuse?" She laughed coldly. Yang Yi shook his head. "I really can't stand the sight of you." She looked at him with indifference. "Me too." Yang Yi glanced at her. "How about we spar a little? Actually, I know 36 yin yang techniques. We can have a good spar."